Is there a volunteer who would be willing to give us a prayer, an opening prayer for seminar? Steve, thank you.
Father in heaven, we thank thee that we can meet this university and meet the seminar. We thank thee for the great learning that is available to us here. We pray thy spirit to guide us as we listen and participate, and that we can be wise, keep our family safe from COVID-19 and also other things that come upon us that we can do something about. We pray that we may remember thee, and we pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Steve, thank you. Welcome everyone to week 5 of the semester. That means 1/3 of the way through. You have only 2/3 of the semester left to go. Hope classes are going great for you. We are thrilled about the progress we're seeing as faculty and you, our students, and continue to let us know, ask that you'll let us know how we can support you in meeting your goals. Let's see, Maku has an announcement. So Maku, you can unmute yourself and take care of that.
Yeah, just super quick IPSO announcement. One, don't forget to cast your votes for IPSO officers. I sent out the poll last week. Your votes need to be sent in or cast by Friday. So I'll send out another reminder email with a link to that shortly after seminar today. But if you haven't done that, please make sure to do that. And then also, as always, we're going to have a hangout after seminar today. So feel free to stick around and join us for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Maku. The only other announcement I have is a reminder about Donut Symposium on Friday. So we do need RSVPs for this since it is an in-person event. We committed that we would get a list of everyone who is coming and maintain proper social distancing. So it is Friday at 11 o'clock. It is the lawns just east of the McKay building. Bring something to sit on if you'd like to sit on something other than the grass. We will have donuts there that we will be distributing using proper food safety handling procedures. A mask is required. And Heather, what am I forgetting? Any other information we need to? It will be an hour and a half. It's from 11 to 12:30. You can come for some or all of that time. So if you only want to come and get a donut and walk away, great. We still need you to RSVP, and I need those RSVPs today. So I'll keep the link open until just until the end of the day, and then tomorrow morning when I log in, I'm going to close it down so we have a final count. Okay, we are ready then to begin our seminar today. Every year, we like to honor some of our students who have performed outstanding work over the previous year, and we do that in 3 categories. We do that in projects and research and teaching. And I said it in that order because that's the order in which our presenters are going to share today. We're proud of all of our students, and we want to honor exemplary projects and research and teaching to give the rest of you models of things that you can achieve, and also to just honor great work. We want to recognize the great work that happens in this department as well. So today, our presenters are Garrett Egan, a recent graduate who will be presenting his design project to us. Stacy Mason, who's also a recent graduate, will be presenting her dissertation, talking about her dissertation. And Sarah Tulioma, who is going to be talking about her teaching experience as the outstanding teaching recipient of the past year. So please join me in welcoming these students. We'll take them in that order. Each will have 10 to 12 minutes to present, and then some time for questions and answer afterwards. And you can ask questions either specific to the things they present or broader about how do they get started, how were they successful in achieving these program milestones. So Garrett, feel free to unmute yourself and you can take away your presentation.
All right, cool, thanks. Yeah, let's just dive in. I'll start sharing my screen. Hi, everybody. Before I get started, I just kind of want to acknowledge the wild situation that I find myself in. Those on this Zoom call, I've got former professors, committee members, students that I know, students I don't know, current colleagues, people that I work with right now. My parents are listening in. Hi, Mom and Dad. So it's kind of a crazy collision of worlds right now for me, but I hope to have something on here that all of you appreciate and something that you can take with you. So I was talking about my thesis project. It's called Designing Game Design at BYU because I made a game design class for BYU. That's cool. Probably not very many of you are going to be remaking this same class. At least I hope not. It's a pretty good class. But I hope to kind of give you some background in what I did, process that I went through, and then some lessons that I learned along the way, so that maybe this is a little bit more insightful for you. And for those of you who are committee members of mine or were committee members of mine, don't fall asleep. I've got some Easter eggs in here for you that you probably don't know. So enjoy, everybody. Hopefully this is really valuable for all of you. So first off, I just want to cover, what did I even do for my project? Well, the simple version is it was a course. It's a 2-credit introduction to game design course for BYU's animation program. Inside of that course, I kind of broke it out into 4 general sections or types of things that I built for the course: projects, assignments, readings, and activities. That helped me kind of organize myself in knowing what all had to be done in order to teach this class. For context, I designed, developed, taught, and evaluated this course. So it was very like high level in all of those areas because it needed to be built from scratch. But it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of go through the entire process of designing and teaching courses based on my designs. So each of these then had specific things that I needed to build for this course. So for projects, there were 2 main projects: a design document and a pitch that is like a presentation where everybody's going to pitch their game design at the end of the class. There's also so many other things that went into this course. I had a final exam and grading rubrics for every single thing. We went on a field trip together. So many other things that you will never read about in my project report. And probably for the best. There's just a lot to cover, and even a report of 50 or 100 pages just isn't gonna capture everything that went into this project. Speaking of, for those of you who are still going through the program and thinking about doing a project, I just want to like pull back the curtain a little bit on what that looks like. So my final report for this project ended up being 63 pages. For me, that was terrifying. Going in, I didn't know what to expect. That's a lot of writing. It's longer than I've ever done in my entire life. Maybe all of the papers in my entire life combined to about 63 pages. I don't know. But there's a lot that goes into this, and the writing actually ended up being one of the easier parts for me. So to start off with, there's initial research, and there's tons of it. Reading books, watching videos, articles, having discussions with experts, phone calls, emails, you name it. There's tons and tons and tons of material out there, way more than 63 pages worth. And your job in building out a design is not to start at 0 and build up to 63. It's to find all of the existing stuff out in the universe and summarize it into 63, which is way harder to do, but also there's plenty of material out there for you. For me, that synthesized into a whole bunch of documents. So that is those project descriptions that I was talking about, like the project and the pitch and all of the weekly assignments. That's templates that I put together, teacher or instructor notes, slide decks, timelines, analysis notes, all sorts of other things that are far more content than what I have in my final report. So my suggestion there is write it down. Write down all of your thoughts, all of your notes. It's way easier to go back and reference those notes than it is to remember what you were thinking 6 months ago. Lastly, as a side note, it's helpful to have a lot of sections. My report ended up having over 100 subsections in it. You do the math. It's much easier to write a whole bunch of small pieces than it is to think about one huge piece to write. Okay, so what did I learn in the process? A couple of things, and I'll share some examples from my specific project that I think are applicable for all of us. The first one, go broad, then specific, repeat. My background, some of my background is in fine arts, and so I take a lot of like metaphorical examples from there. So if I'm doing a painting, what I'm gonna do is block out the big areas of color first. I'm not going to spend all of my time in one small section. I'm gonna get the general idea down first, and then start finessing some of the details in one spot, and then move to another spot, and then zoom back out and look at the whole thing and see if it's all still working together again. And if I need to, I can just cover over any one of those large pieces with different colors or different items in there. I think in instructional design, we do the same kind of process, which is we often will start with this like huge learning objective. What are we trying to do? And then zoom into some of these pieces that help us get there. So for me, one example was doing a content analysis, really identifying what it is that constitutes a good game design and what is that not. What's the difference between those things? And before writing out any templates or other documents on these assignments, I needed to have clear from a really high perspective what I was aiming for so that I knew when I had hit it. The second is setting simple constraints. In visual arts, you can learn about all sorts of different things like color theory and lighting and composition, perspective, media forms, history and culture, anatomy, and all sorts of other subjects that help you be a better artist. But while you're in the act of making art, you can't be thinking about all of those things all at the same time. And so it's helpful to extract from all of that a few key things that for this piece are going to be critical. So for me, that ended up being researching a bunch of design theories and learning theories, and picking out of those, extracting those key phrases or key measurable ways that I can know if I'm actually hitting the target that I'm aiming for or not. And lastly, focus on the objective. I think I went through maybe 8 or 10 different revisions of my learning objectives because I thought this is a 2-credit semester-long course. We can put in a lot of objectives because there's a lot of teaching that can happen in this time. So I started with a list longer than this, but I revised it down to about 8. From there, and working with my committee, we revised it down to 5. And then revised down again to 3, because what I found along the way is that there is so much more depth that you can gain by focusing in on a few key things that really matter, and really being hard on yourself and on your design to pull out anything that is not absolutely necessary in that course. So for me, this turned into really focusing on clear, measurable learning objectives and sticking to those and measuring everything that I built against those objectives to make sure that it was actually getting me where I wanted to go. 3 things to learn from an otherwise crazy, fun, wild project. So, questions?
Okay, be thinking of questions and save them for the end if you still like to ask Garrett anything towards the end. And Stacy, we'll turn the time now over to you. Be sure to unmute yourself, Stacy. Stacy, you're still muted.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I am honored to be here receiving this award and speaking to you today. I was in the IP&T program as a student from 2015 to 2019, and I loved it. So thanks to all the faculty for teaching me, mentoring me, providing the research projects opportunities that I'm going to talk about today. Jason mentioned I'd be talking about the dissertation, which I'm actually going to be talking about more than that. Peter, when he told me about this award, just said, talk about what you accomplished in your research. So I interpreted a little bit more broadly. I'm not going to talk about all the research I did, but I am going to focus on my 5 published articles, which include a couple of my dissertation, or both of my dissertation articles. But I'm also going to go back to some earlier publications from the program. So my first publication is something I wrote as a master's student for a class in open educational resources taught by John Hilton. And throughout the course, each class member worked on writing a publishable paper. Since I didn't have my own data, John connected me with Lane Fisher and Dave Ernst, who had already collected and analyzed data, written the methods and results sections of the paper. I basically wrote the rest, the introduction, the literature review, the discussion, and the conclusion, with considerable input from John and Lane. In the study, we wanted to understand whether raters' characteristics affected the ratings of open textbooks. And we found that raters generally gave high ratings, but there were variations in quality identified by the reviewers. Faculty rank did not appear to affect variation in the ratings, but Canadian reviewers tended to rate textbooks lower than US reviewers, and physics and chemistry textbooks were rated lower than other textbooks. Our main conclusion was that online ratings can be used to help consumers discriminate among various open textbooks, which is important, but reviews may be most useful when the reviewer and reader teach similar courses in the same country, which makes sense, not too surprising. After that first experience, I decided to further research open textbooks for my thesis, and Royce Kimmons agreed to be my thesis advisor. He connected me with another researcher who connected me with secondary science teachers who were using open textbooks in their classes. And we wanted to better understand how using open textbooks influenced their classroom practices, especially surrounding textbooks and openness. So I surveyed and interviewed the teachers about their textbook practices with their previous textbook and with their new open textbook. The teachers indicated that their open textbooks were more up to date than their previous textbooks had been and better aligned with standards. They designed the textbooks with links to other sources and used those and liked those, but otherwise the teachers reported that they used their open textbooks pretty much the same way they used their previous textbooks, which from the teacher perspective is probably a good thing. They didn't have to change their practice. Once they had developed the book they wanted, they used the same book for all of their students without adapting it during the year, because to make multiple versions or updates would not have been practical. To me, the main contribution of this article is getting teacher experiences and voices out there. and helping people in the field understand how teachers use their open textbooks. Within the academic community, proponents of OER can be pretty idealistic in their approach, openness for its own sake, but we found that the teachers in our study were very practical and pragmatic about what they wanted in a textbook and how they used it. After my master's degree, I continued in the doctoral program, but decided to shift the focus of my research. I was especially interested in professional development, but I wasn't sure what to do with that. Toward the end of my first semester as a PhD student, Rick sent out an email saying, if you want to play with robots, talk to me, which sounded like fun. I was just looking for a project, but I met with Rick and he said, there's a lot you can do with this. And I realized that I could combine these robots with my interest in professional development. So the next semester I took IP&T 750, the literature review class, and wrote an early draft of my third article, an extended literature review, which Peter Rich later helped me to revise and publish. And it was the first article of my dissertation prospectus and dissertation. So the purpose of the literature review was to examine what research has found about training elementary teachers to teach computing, coding, and computational thinking, looking specifically at studies that address teacher knowledge, self-efficacy, beliefs, and attitudes, and at how well the interventions aligned with elements of effective teacher preparation or professional development. In our review of 21 studies, we found that training improved teachers' self-efficacy, attitudes, and knowledge, even over relatively short interventions. Training focused more on content knowledge than pedagogical knowledge, and studies did not tend to address changes in teacher practice or in student outcomes, which again is understandable because we all have to limit the scope of our articles, but we were looking at this framework that said that effective training leads to changes in instruction and improves student learning. So we suggested that in our training programs, we need to include more pedagogical training and practice. And in research, we need to include more long-term studies and look more at teacher outcomes and student outcomes. So my fourth article is also for my dissertation. During the same semester that I did the literature review, I did my second PhD project, which involved my developing some professional development training, training teachers in a couple of schools, giving teachers a couple of weeks to implement the training, and then collecting data about their experience. I'd hoped and planned to continue and build on this pilot study for my final article, but neither of the principals I was working with was ready to expand their program. So I asked Peter if he had something I could do for my third dissertation article, and he walked me through about 8 projects he was working on and let me choose which one I wanted to take over. And I decided to develop a scale to assess elementary students' attitudes toward coding. I chose this project because it interested me, but also because I thought that I had the training to develop the scale since I had taken measurement theory. And I figured I could complete it in a couple of semesters, which is funny because to complete my dissertation, I had to take 2 additional statistics classes. And we ended up collecting and analyzing 2 sets of data after we determined that the first data set was probably too small. And I graduated several months later than I had planned, but it was all a good learning experience. And we developed a scale that researchers can use to assess elementary students' attitudes toward coding, and we got it published in a good journal. So here is the model we developed. We did confirmatory factor analysis, or CFA, first, and identified 5 working constructs. And then we did SEM, or structural equational modeling. And
Hey,
found,
Stacy.
yeah, is it time?
Whoa, I just can't see your model. Are you sharing
Yeah,
your
see the model?
Uh-uh.
It was part of the same presentation. So what are you seeing?
We only are seeing your face. We haven't seen a presentation the whole time.
You haven't seen a presentation the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That's fun. Let me get out of here and
It's still been very interesting though.
you guys are great. My presentation was amazing, and I'm sorry you missed it. So let me see if I can share. There we go. Gonna share my screen. And now I need to get back into my presentation. We'll see if I can do that. Okay. Okay, so here I am. Thanks for letting me know. So here's my model. And we found that, so I'm going to tell you that the social value construct is how students felt that their teachers, or sorry, their parents and their peers valued coding. And we found that all of these variables on the left, or mostly all of them, predicted students' social value. And so what they thought others thought of coding. And the ones that contributed the most were the frequency with which students were coding and their math interests. And then social value, in turn, strongly predicted students' coding interests, which predicted their coding confidence. And social value also predicted students' perception of coders and their value for coding or coding utility. So that's the gist of what we found, and I think we contributed a good scale to the field. If I hadn't taken that extra semester to finish the program, I never would have been involved. In my 5th article, which this one I played a smaller role in, though. I came in after Peter and Ross had done the bulk of the work. They'd had pieces of an article that I was able to help them to put together, and I helped with the introduction and the literature review and some editing. So this was another skill that mostly they developed, and this one was to identify factors that affect teachers' beliefs about teaching coding, computational thinking. So the result was a 33-item scale, and like I said, it assesses teachers' beliefs about computing. So my advice to you, which, you know, people love to give advice, I do as well, is if you are planning to do research, become an RA. I learned so much from working with Peter and with Heather and with the other people I worked with. As an RA, you get to work with an expert and learn and go through their research process with them. I'd also say take IP&T 750, that's the lit review class, if you are planning to do research, and other classes where you are working on publishable articles, or for any class where you're working on an article, see if you can publish it, and then follow through, submit your articles, plan to revise and resubmit your articles, and just take advantage of the opportunities you have here. Thanks.
All right, Sarah, take it away.
All right. Pull up my screen here. You guys see that all right? Okay. So I'm Sarah. Oops, wrong button. I'm in my second year of the master's program here in IP&T, and I'm an instructor for IP&T 373, which is one of the 3 courses here in the program that we teach to undergraduate students. And so I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're teaching in that class, and then a few things that we've been working on to help improve the course, as well as things that I've learned through this experience. First of all, so this class is called Teaching in K-12 Online and Blended Learning Contexts. And so we're focusing on teaching undergraduate students. They're all teaching majors who are preparing to be school teachers. And so we focus on, as you can see in this graphic over here from our textbook, the foundational skills in technology and dispositions that you need to be able to teach effectively in a blended or online setting, as well as the 4 main competencies for blended teaching. which are online integration. That refers to being able to integrate aspects of your teaching online. And then data practices, being able to use data analytics and various data you can get online about your students to then help with the personalization, help to personalize that learning experience for each of your students. And we also talk about how to create and effectively facilitate online interactions, whether that's between peers and also between the teacher and the peer and the students as well. And so we teach our students these concepts and also help them to apply them. So we hope that this class is really applicable to them. We teach them how to use Canvas as teachers. Many of them are familiar with that LMS as students, but there's quite a few new things you have to learn as a teacher who is kind of behind the scenes in that LMS. And so they each get the experience to create their own learning module that they will hopefully be able to take and actually use in their future classrooms. And so it's very applicable. That's one of the things I love about this class. And even since the pandemic, I've had an increase of my students express how applicable they think these things are right now. And one thing I love about this class too is we're also trying to model these competencies as we go. So they're learning about these things, we're modeling them in class so they kind of get the student's perspective on these things. And then they also get to create their own version in whatever subject they are planning to teach in the future. Here's our team right here. I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Because really none of this teaching would be possible without all of us working together. We also have Chi on our team this semester. I couldn't find a picture of her, but she's also another great asset to our team. And so we meet every week together. We talk about how things are going in each of our individual sections, where there might be areas we need to improve. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but this is one of the best things I've learned from this experience is as instructors and designers as well. I think, at least for me, it's easy as a designer to get in my own mindset of kind of how I do things, but being able to work with a group and bringing different perspectives and challenging ideas has been a great learning experience for me, and I think it's really helps our class succeed. So along with that, one of the main things I've learned is this idea of iterative design and how important that is, especially when we're teaching in classes. I have a basic definition up here, but it's this idea that we're in this cyclical process of prototyping, testing, analyzing, and refining our product. And I feel like this is what we're constantly doing with those weekly meetings I've mentioned. We're always, we're checking out the data analytics of our students, figuring out where there might be bumps in our course. We also send out weekly surveys that we're constantly evaluating and just really striving to focus on the students' needs and how we can continue to make the course better. Every semester that I've taught, the course has looked very different just because we're always in this process of trying to make it how it will best fit the needs of our students at that current time. And one of the things that we've really focused on since I've been a part of the team is to help students read more deeply and grasp the concepts that they're reading in their textbook and that we're learning in class. So I'll go over a few things we've been doing to help with that. This is our textbook right here. It's available on EdTech Books, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And I highly encourage anyone who may be teaching or designing for online or blended learning settings, whether it's K through 12 or any other setting, to check this out, because this is a great resource that has very many applicable things that you can do. Dr. Graham and Cecil and a few other colleagues published this book, and it's what we use in the class. One thing we've done to kind of help students grasp the concepts of their reading a little bit better is we've integrated interactive application questions for them to work through as they read throughout the chapter, as opposed to waiting until they've read through the whole thing and then going on to take a quiz. So they'll read short chunks or sections, and then you can see in this screenshot they have a little section of questions that helps them really focus on those concepts they just read and be able to apply them and check their understanding as they go. One other thing that we've done and that we're still experimenting with in this process of iterative design is the tool called Hypothesis. This is a fairly new digital annotation tool, and if any of you go to their website, you can actually create a free account, and it allows you to highlight and annotate text on the web. And you have the option to make your annotations public to anyone else who also has an account, or to make them private just for your own use. But this tool also has LMS integration tool. We're able to integrate it right into our course and use it as an assignment, attach our reading to it. So we've done this, and as you can see in this screenshot, people are able to highlight specific areas of the text and create annotations. And we've given them fairly loose guidelines to do so. There are certain requirements they have to meet, but we really are trying to create a more authentic experience for them to be able to focus in, find the important concepts of the text, and also be able to interact with each other. So that's another benefit of this, is people can reply to each other's annotations. And something we're still trying to work on is to help students be able to communicate with each other a little bit more in this platform. But from what I have seen so far, when students do communicate with each other here, they do seem to be more authentic conversations occurring, as opposed to a standard discussion board. But it also really does depend. We're learning on the students' preferences as well. So from this, we're actually beginning a research project to delve more into this and figure out how this tool can be beneficial for us and students in our class, as well as in other areas as well. But I want to mention my favorite part of this whole experience is actually teaching. I just think it's very rewarding to be able to interact with students and see them progress and improve and overcome challenges that they face in the class, and being able to get to know the students and understand what else is going on in their lives outside of the classroom, and just helping to be an advocate, help them to achieve and really develop these skills, and earn mastery in these concepts. That's our ultimate goal in this course, is to really help them master these concepts and skills so they can take them and apply them in the real world. And I do just have to say, I think teaching is one of the best ways to help you, whether you're focused more on design or research. I think it just gives a great added perspective and lens that you can see as you're doing design work. I also work part-time for BYU Online. I've recently just moved to help design trainings for TAs, so a very similar context as this class, trainings for TAs who are just beginning to TA online for the first time. And as I've helped design trainings for these things, as well as design for courses that I've helped with in the past, having this teaching experience has really opened my perspective and helped and shifted my design priorities and the way I approach design a little bit more. And so I just encourage all of you, if you're interested in having teaching experience, talk to your advisor or a faculty member, and they can direct you to the right person. It's also a great way, I use this as my internship opportunity as well, a great way to just gain experience and help you in all other aspects of the program. It's helped me, it's led to research opportunities that I'm now involved in, as well as helped me in my design work and other things I've been doing. So it's been a great opportunity, and I'm just very honored and grateful to receive this award and hope to continue to live up to it as we continue teaching. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Stacy and Garrett. We're proud of all of you and grateful for your contributions to the program. We have a few minutes for questions. There was one question in the chat that I don't think has been asked yet. It was directed to Garrett and Stacy. Emily was curious what you guys are doing now. Let's hear from Garrett and then Stacy.
Yeah, I am working at Qualtrics now. So shout out to the Qualtrics people on the call and doing instructional design work there.
And I do a little teaching and a little consulting, and I'm editing a couple of articles for publication.
There's a question for Garrett in the chat. Can you tell us a little more about how you were able to handle the stakeholders for your course?
Yeah, it's fun to call it handle because sometimes you feel like you're the one handled and not the other way around. But I think there's a lot to be said about just managing expectations and making sure that they know what you're working on as you're working on it and not only after it's done. I think before I did my final defense, all of my committee members had seen my report probably 6 or 7 times, and I had asked them to read through specific sections that I had updated or read through the whole thing and provide comments or whatever else. And I sat down with them very frequently. Peter was my committee chair, and I met with him at least every month for the entire time, just to like set checkpoints and expectations along the way to make sure that I was getting done what needed to be done, and that everybody who needed to know about what was getting done knew what was going on along the way.
Did you ever have any times where there were conflicts amongst those different stakeholders?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you handled
it? Sure. I think my strategy tended to just be candid. If there was a requirement, for example, that I follow a particular design strategy or something like that, maybe the animation department's like, okay, but we don't care as much about the design strategy that you use. We care that it just works. We care that it's good. And so having those conversations and being candid and being willing to say, well, this is what makes it good. And so that's why I'm following this. That's why I'm doing this. Just aligns all of those expectations for everybody.
Question for Sarah: does the content you use with the hypothesis tool have to be open content?
So what I know about it, I believe yes. Usually they're PDFs, and I know Hypothesis suggests you use PDFs. It works a little bit better. We use our online open textbook, and that seems to work. It is, like I mentioned, a fairly new tool, so we're often finding little glitches and things that we hope they improve. And so, but I think, yes, it should be open for it to work.
A question for Stacy: did you find out why Canadian raters rated books lower in general?
No, we didn't really. There was a correlation between the Canadian reviewers and the people reviewing the physics and chemistry textbooks. So the Canadian reviewers rated textbooks lower, and the physics and chemistry textbooks were rated lower. There was a correlation there, but the data didn't give us any idea of why. I mean, it could be that the textbooks were designed more for an American audience by an American, or that they had higher standards, or that it's harder to write a good physics or chemistry textbook.
Other questions? Oh, here's one for Stacy. Did you use SEM in your research? Did you use structural equation modeling in your research that you shared?
Yeah, the model that I shared was structural equational model. So just in that article.
Garrett, what kind of feedback have you gotten from students on the course, and will it be offered in future semesters?
Yeah, so I was actually a co-instructor on the course, so I got student feedback just through BYU's regular like feedback for professors thing. A lot of the feedback was fairly consistent, which was there was a lot to get through and they would have benefited from more time to practice. Meaning like working on their final projects sooner in the semester rather than waiting until later. Also, the class is currently in review to be available starting next year, next fall.
Kind of a general question that some may have insight on. Are the era of textbooks over? How effective are textbooks in general? Stacy, in your research, did that come up at all?
A little bit, yeah. The teachers didn't use the textbooks a ton. They weren't, and like I said, they they used the open textbook about the same as they used the previous textbook, but they added links to it and they really liked being able to link to other resources like videos.
Any other questions for our presenters? Garrett, what courses were helpful for you?
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Helpful in what way? All of the courses were helpful.
Lane, is there anything you want to follow up with? Anything particular you're asking? Helpful in what sense?
No, just generally, especially, I guess, specific to this project.
Mm-hmm. So it was helpful for me that my background was in animation. That's where I did my undergrad. So going back and teaching a course on that was sort of natural. So I would highly suggest that you pick a project that you're passionate about and that you have some sort of like interest in, and not just like whatever's there, whatever's easiest. Beyond that, all of the design core classes, Jason's classes, and then Peter's advanced class at the capstone class is helpful, although I took that after I finished the project, would have been helpful. Those for sure, just getting the chance to get your feet wet and actually do some designing is key.
We'll take the last two questions here from the chat and then we'll wrap it up. So the first is also for Garrett. With a long paper, long report like this, Garrett, how long were your references? And then Alyssa has a question for Sarah after that. Did COVID change the way that you taught the 373 course?
So the project report is a little bit different. The references section's not super long, but there's a lot of appendix sections that are like, these are my design notes, these are some of the prototypes that I built in early stage and all of that. The actual executive summary piece, which is like the report, is only like 18 pages long. All the rest is appendix.
And for our course, yes, COVID did drastically change how we taught the course. Originally, kind of with this idea of modeling how teachers might teach in their classroom in blended learning, we would have our first unit on Zoom synchronously, and then our second unit we'd actually do in the classroom and model different blended learning models that they might use for their own classrooms. And then our last unit we would do asynchronously. And so now we've completely shifted that. We're everything is on Zoom, and then we have an asynchronous portion. And even since COVID started, we've changed how we set up the units and things. So just based on feedback and our own observations of the classes, we've all gone through this.
We're so grateful again for Sarah and Garrett and Stacy's presentations and their work in our program. Thank you again. For those of you who, after the seminar, feel like you want to get more involved in a project or research or teaching, just ask someone on the faculty and we'll be able to connect you with places that you're interested. Stephanie's asking if the slides are available. I'll just let the presenters, if that's something you're willing to share, email those to me, and then I'll get them to Rachel, who can put them into the Canvas course for us. I will put one more time, this is the link to sign up for Donut Symposium, Friday, 11 a.m. If you're interested, please RSVP. We will see you back here again next week for seminar. And I will transfer hosting over to Maku and let him take it away now for